further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Michelle Curtis and the Young Professional panel. Thanks.
This is a really exciting panel and a really interesting topic, and we are right before lunch, which I recognize, so I appreciate your attention. We have 4 panelists today, and our panelists are absolutely incredible. Each of them can speak to young professionals in a really different way, and they have incredible experiences to share with you. So I'll start with a brief overview. What are young professionals? Lane's webinar was incredible, and ever since I've been speaking with Lane about this topic, I've come to call young professionals YPs. So we're going to be using the term YP probably a lot in our panel today, so you know what it is. You've seen young professional groups or junior boards or perhaps young professional host committees for events. An example of a young professional group, there's the San Francisco Symphony, then they have the Symphonics group, which is their young professional league. An example of a junior board or a young professional board, there's Big Brothers Big Sisters, and then they have the Big Brothers Big Sisters junior board. An example of a young professional host committee. There's the Macy's Passport Glamorama. The ticket sales are at a certain level. And then they have the young professional host committee that's selling to maybe a more approachable ticket level for people who have different incomes or at different stages of their career. So can you guys give me an example of a young professional group? Could somebody call one out from this side of the room?
Infusion, Encore.
Great.
Bravo.
Perfect. Infusion, which we will hear about, Bravo, Encore. Maybe an example of a junior board.
Catholic Charities.
Great, Catholic Charities, that's a good one. And then another event that has a young professional host committee. Anyone else? Maybe the Fall Antique Show in San Francisco, that one has one. Okay, so what can these young professionals do for you? They're going to be buying tickets. They're going to be posting on Facebook, which we heard a lot about today. They're going to be creating buzz. They're going to be checking in. Have all of you checked in today? Checking in is a huge thing that I think young professionals do. And it creates that buzz that we heard a lot about from Eventbrite and others. They'll be tweeting, going viral. And also they're filling a pipeline of leadership for your group. They're being cultivated as leaders to go on in the larger group. Who are they? I'm going to give really, really basics. We don't want to put hard and fast rules around what young professionals are, but usually they are working in their career, they're building their career. They're media savvy. Usually they are millennials, so people in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, although again, we don't want to put any hard and fast rules on that. They've been marketed to usually their entire lives. So I think Greg on the first panel mentioned that there's something like 8,000 impressions that you're marketed to every day. I think that was the right number. Incredible. So they're very savvy. But they also understand cause marketing and they understand giving back. So with that general overview, I want to go to our panel, which has an incredible amount of experience. I'm going to ask that each one of them go through and first just take a minute to tell us about themselves, what they do, how they relate to the young professional scene. And then we're going to go back and ask them more specific questions. So why don't we start with Peyton?
Hi, I'm Peyton Cochran. I'm from New York City, and I started my own company called Epic Marketing and Design. It's a creative consultancy, and we offer services in events, products, interiors, and communications. I was asked to speak on this panel specifically because of my involvement with the American Folk Art Museum in New York City. I am the chair and founder of the Young Patrons Group, which is a young professionals group there in New York City. It was one of the first, and I'm sure, I don't know if you all have heard, but in New York it was big news that sadly we just lost the building, the museum that was purchased by MoMA. So the young professionals and I are rallying together to kind of keep our group in motion. But that is my involvement with young professionals. So 2000, about 3 years ago, I started the Young Professionals Group at the American Folk Art Museum, and basically there was nothing in place, and I was an avid follower. I have a background in studio arts, and one of my passions is that a lot of artists love to create and they don't really like to sell. But especially in a down economy, one of the first commodities to go are art and things that you don't necessarily need. So people who are really creative and creating beautiful pieces of art weren't really selling their pieces, and they were having to default on taking full-time jobs and all sorts of different areas to supply and for their lifestyle. But I went to this museum, and it's one of the few museums in New York that is kind of the do-it-yourself. They're self-taught artists, and I mean, it's really hard to define what folk art is. But I was so intrigued because it was right next to the Museum of Modern Art and across the street from the Museum of Art and Design. People would walk right past it. It was completely unnoticed, but the artwork in there was so phenomenal. But, it kind of came to me as this challenge, but a diamond in the rough. And when I asked one of the board of trustees, hey, do you all have a younger contingent in place? And they looked at me like I was insane. And pretty much their demographic ranged from 50 to 80-year-olds. I mean, I was the youngest attendee in this museum by about 30 or 40 years at the time. So that's when I started cultivating young members, and really especially ones who are in the arts. And from my background of being a studio artist, there was immediate need. They felt like they could serve a purpose, and they wanted to, one, get credibility and ownership, and to give back, and especially kind of rooting for the underdog. It was this do-it-yourself community of artists, and this young group that came in, and right next to MoMA, Museum of Museum of Art and Design, they really sought after this challenge as well, and it's been an evolving and growing experience. But that's really what kind of spearheaded the whole movement for the young patrons at the Folk Art Museum.
Thank you. Just for the record, I'm not a young professional, I'm a seasoned professional. But young professionals are very, very near and dear to my heart. And per Michelle's question, just a little bit on my background. I literally grew up in San Francisco licking stamps and hand addressing envelopes at my parents' kitchen table. Why? Because my mother was the special event chairperson for CPMC for 27 years and produced all kinds of events as a volunteer, as a member of the board. From there, I went on to be president of the Spinsters, which I know Michelle was. I've served on numerous boards. The first one was the Easter Seal Society. The second board I actually served on was here for the San Francisco Art Institute, and then I've moved on to numerous other things. But one of the things that I think is most important per today's discussion, actually two things, from 1983 to 89, I was the youngest board member on the Museum Society, which represents the DeYoung and the Legion. And at that time, Harry Parker was the executive director of the museum. He had just moved here from Dallas, called me into his office, which was a little scary because I didn't have the ability to write a big check like the rest of the board members. But he said, Marsha, your expertise is in marketing. He said, I really want you to help launch San Francisco's first young professionals organization, just like we've done in Dallas. And it was enormously successful. So with that, I rallied my spinster girlfriends, the Junior League posse, anybody I could get my arms around, and we launched what was then called the Art Connection. It's now Art Point. That was the first young professionals organization in San Francisco. I'm very, very proud to have done that, and very, very proud that the fundraisers that we did really helped reach out to those new younger donors. We did huge parties based around every major exhibit. I was asked numerous times to have the band turn it down because there were flicks of things coming off these ancient artifacts in the museums. I mean, wild stories. But moving on, life takes different twists and turns, and I become affiliated with UCSF, in particular UCSF Partners in Care, which is a brand new startup organization. One of the subcommittees, which I have founded, and we have one of our co-founders here, Angelica, is UCSF Infusion. That is our young professionals group. We are in the startup mode, and I think I'll wait for your further questions. But that's just a little background on me and why I'm involved with young professionals.
Hi, I'm Laura Phenix, and the main reason why I was asked to sit on this panel is I am very involved with the Young Nonprofit Professional Network and specifically the San Francisco Bay Area chapter. That professional network does a little more of career development for young nonprofit professionals. But in my other roles, I have been working in homeless services in San Francisco for a little over 3 years now, and have also started working with New Sector Alliance that does professional development for AmeriCorps members, and have seen different ways to engage young professionals, getting more connected to the work they're doing and to other organizations that they are passionate about. And I guess a little bit about YNPN. So we're in our 15th year. San Francisco is actually the founding chapter. Next year, 2012, will be our big anniversary, but we've spread to about 40 chapters nationwide, and a couple months ago just secured funding to hire our first national director. So we now have an employee of our network, which is very exciting times for us.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name's Andrew Whelan. I am the CEO of Philanthro, formerly called Philanthro Productions. We just go by Philanthro now to keep it short and sweet. And what we are is a national nonprofit organization that is uniquely 100% volunteer organized. We're not supported by any sort of external organization. Basically, we just created it out of thin air to meet a need of young professionals that wanted to give back and have fun at the same time, kind of basically to eliminate the trade-off. So I wasn't even one of the founding members. We've been around for about 4 years, but a couple guys who I knew at UCLA started it. They were consultants, and they created this great pie chart to show how much time they had in a day. So out of 24 hours, the amount of time when you include sleeping, working, eating, all those sort of things, and then also trying to put in a sliver for doing something good for the world and having fun with friends. When they added that all up, they came up with -3 hours in a day. So they thought, well, how can we eliminate that and try to put a little sanity back in our lives? So we created Philanthro, which was essentially first started as just a nonprofit event planning group. We still do that. We throw parties for different causes. And the thing that's kind of unique about what we do is it's not tied to any one charity continually. We keep it rotating. So for example, last night we had our second annual multi-city event where all 5 of our cities threw a party for Donors Choose. And we were actually able to, the numbers are still coming in. We closed the doors around 2 a.m. last night, so still counting some tabs, but I think we're going to raise about $20,000 from that. And it's all raised at $10 a pop, pretty much. So we're never trying to be the biggest donor. We're not trying to be $1 million donors, but what we want to do is make it approachable and exciting for every nonprofit, basically every young professional to connect with meaningful nonprofits in a fun and meaningful way.
Andrew's such a great example of a young professional. He was at the Viva Bright Awards last night while simultaneously throwing 5 parties across the country, raising money, and he's the president, CEO of the nonprofit group, and also does real estate investment. So I can see where that pie chart's coming in for people. Peyton, you are well established in the young professional group or scene on the East Coast, and I know you have a lot of background on who young professionals are. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this group is like and how some young professionals might differ from others?
Sure. In my experience, I mean, beyond the Bogart Museum, I've been involved with a couple different organizations in New York City. And the interesting trend that I've seen, there's kind of like 3 different groups of young professionals, and there's this group initially that comes right out of college. And I feel like they're the ones that come into these events and they're really looking to have a really great, fun time. They're not necessarily associated with the cause per se,
they're kind of the party animals, and they want to go in these herds, and it's huge in New York. I mean, these ticket sales they sell out, and there's a huge population. There's a whole southern contingent up in New York, which is its own beast. But they throw parties that, I mean, you can't even get in line to get the tickets. But if you ask them, they probably wouldn't even know exactly what the cause was, why they're there. They just know that it's a really awesome party and their friends are going, and hey, I can actually spend, and they will spend up to like $150, which is impressive. Then there's, I guess you have in the middle group, I'd say maybe the late 20s, early 30s, a group that really does want to kind of get involved but doesn't have the ability to sit down and have weekly meetings, monthly meetings, and strategize, but they're willing to make a commitment, buy a membership, and that gives them kind of credibility and ownership. A lot of those guys are kind of young studs on Wall Street, and some of the women, working women, that just they want to be. The social aspect is important to them. Being involved is important, but time is, it's tight, and it's hard for them to commit more than that. But they do go to these events. They do kind of bridge the gap between the younger, if we call them the YP3s, and the YP1s. So those would be kind of the YP2s and YP3s. And really at the top of that pyramid that we've been talking about are the ones that want to sit on the boards. They really are passionate about the causes, and they really want to roll up their sleeves. They want to have a voice. They're willing to make a financial commitment, and they're near and dear to the organization. They might not have as much time, but they'll make it. They carve it out, and they show up to those events. I would say that those are the people, and the young professionals, early 30s, they're a little bit more established in their careers, and they can attend these events and meetings. But what I found, and it's really interesting, and for example, I mean, when I'm trying to pull in a group, I'm like, hey, I've got to think about financials. So make the commitment for the influencers who can pull in their friends. And this one example I can think of recently, I called up, I was like, hey, I need a guy who's in financial, whatever Wall Street does these days, who knows how to crunch numbers on this board. I need them to be able to make a financial commitment. He's kind of into the arts, but he'd probably rather just give money than do this. And he actually came back to me and was like, well, I'm happy to do the financial commitment, but I want to make sure I have a voice. I was like, oh, well, yeah, no, of course you can. I mean, we want you to be a part of it. Usually, a lot of people before were just, here, let me throw the money and I'll show up. But I found recently more and more of the young professional groups wanting to have a purpose and a tie to something, and really becoming involved.
That's a great background. Marsha, you have set up so many of these young professional groups. Can you kind of tell us briefly, and I know this panel is very quick-paced, but how do you go about starting a young professional group?
Sure. First of all, just let me address UCSF Partners in Care, I neglected to tell you earlier, has one mission, and that mission is to raise funds to treat patients of all ages and their families while they're being treated at UCSF Medical Center and UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital. So to that end, the young professionals are absolutely critical to us in that most, initially we have a membership of about 500 partners in care. A lot of our first young professional members were sons and daughters of these members because Partners in Care tends to be really more my age. Then we bring on board people like Angelica and Kim Goldfein, where they have legacy with the school and or with Angelica's career, with Genentech. It was an important relationship for us to reach out to. Everybody that's come on board in Partners in Care and Infusion has a desire to get involved in UCSF Medical Center because of its world-famous reputation, but also because of their personal interest and or experience with something having to do with healthcare. A relative's experience, their mother, their father, their grandmother, grandfather, whatever. So we are a new organization, we're still building. but it's getting involved in staging membership drives and parties. We've staged 4 events thus far, 2 membership drive events. One was at the Cinta Hair Salon, where we offered free hair services for both men and women for an evening with champagne and cupcakes and whatnot. That was enormously successful. Then we did another fundraising drive party at Zen's at the Embarcadero Center. That was great, and that was a build-up to our first big fundraiser, which we staged in August, which was Splash. Splash was a great party boat cruise. We had 150, we maxed out. Why am I holding a stethoscope? Because our parties are fun. This was the party prop that every attendee got. Why a stethoscope? Obviously UCSF. Girl puts it on. She wants to listen to her friend's heart. You know, I mean, it's all fun. And then we just had a rock the roof party, rock climbing party on the top of one of the buildings at our Mission Bay campus. So we're trying to do things that are out of the box fun. Everybody spreads the word to the next person. And who doesn't want a slice of UCSF Medical Center? By the way, that's our hot logo.
When's your next event? I want to buy a ticket on Eventbrite.
We're working on it. We've got 2 big partners that we're working with right now, but more news on that later.
Great. And I know we're going to be wrapping up, but we do want to hear from these 2 more panelists. Laura, you were going to speak to kind of star young professional groups from around the country. And then Andrew was going to speak to thinking outside the box for young professional groups. So if you guys can do that with about a minute and a half, 2 minutes each.
And speak somewhat more on what young professional groups can achieve. And some of the big successes that I have seen are for sort of smaller, very specific campaigns. For a nonprofit organization who has such a big fundraising need, especially right now, a lot of smaller projects get dropped off because there can't be the attention to it. So from my employment, I work at Hamilton Family Center. We've been working on gathering, we have some really long, dedicated volunteers who've been with us for several years, and they've started coming and meeting the needs of our children's program, which has had substantial budget cuts. And so they try to provide funding for field trips, and the most recent success has been a couple of our longtime volunteers found out that the organization really wanted to send our kids to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Most of our children have not left San Francisco, want to get them outside, see some animals, and have that experience. And so with a series of about 5 bar nights advertised throughout San Francisco in different neighborhoods, we were able to raise the funds to do the buses and the tickets. Monterey Bay Aquarium is not cheap. And so that was able to happen. The other thing young professional groups can really achieve is being a different kind of spokesperson for the organization. I think it's come up a little bit, but some of the longtime donors or patrons are not necessarily these young professionals. They can bring new life and a new view to the marketing strategies of organizations. And the people involved in the programs get bogged down a lot, and so having that fresh face, that fresh voice to be out there talking about the organization.
I think you can hear me. So just with a little bit of time, I just want to say one thing, and then I'll give you the secret to building and keeping a young professional group. I just want to say key thing is just support us. You know, we're young, we're ambitious, we are going to be the future leaders of your organizations. So give us opportunities and empower us, and we'll run with it. We'll do things that you wouldn't believe. So give them the opportunity, they'll run with it. And then the secret to keeping and maintaining a young group, as I found it, it's pretty simple psychology, but I put it into an acronym, so if you want to write this down, this will be my takeaway. I call it CAMP. So C is community. You've got to create a community, you've got to give them something that they will want to be a part of, because if you want them to really do it for the right reason, be volunteers, they won't need to be paid. They'll just want to do it because of the friendships, and that's what we've seen with Philanthro. We've got groups of about 400 current and alumni members, and we all keep in touch. It's an incredible thing. That's the glue that keeps us together. So that's C. Autonomy is A. So give them the ability to do what they need to do. Give them the chance to run with it. You might want to be creative. They might stretch you, push things outside the box, but if you've got the right people and you give them enough support, that autonomy will pay off. M is mastery. that's something that I think all young professionals are looking for as we're developing our careers and developing our just sense of self. If you give us a chance to master a certain skill, whether it be event planning or marketing or something like that, give them a chance to really master something and support them with that, and that's going to glue each individual into it. And finally, P is purpose, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory because all of you here are associated with a great cause. You're doing something incredible that's already successful, but really drill home that purpose, let them feel it, let the young professionals feel imbued with your purpose, and they'll be lifelong supporters. So, C-A-M-P. I think that's all.
Why don't we take a question or two?
Explain, like, how do you get people excited about your mission, but also, like, give them a benefit?
Well, I mean, we talked about this briefly, and I won't go into too much detail, but if it's young professionals, I mean, events are the catalyst. Give them a good time and a party, essentially. They'll come in and they'll help you. If you say, hey, we're going to throw, and I'm not sure what your organization does, but that could be your initial kind of kickoff and hook for them. If you give them these like guaranteed 3 parties throughout the year, they'll say, oh, okay, and then maybe it's a discount, and so that every time that they attend, they get $10 off their ticket. You could definitely pull them in that way.
I'd say just the community aspect is really what I think a lot of young professionals are looking for. So great peers, once you have 1 or 2 to start it off, they're going to be self-sustaining and it'll grow from there.
Also, one of the great attractions of our group is the fact that it's a brand new organization, and we are drawing people from all over the Bay Area who want to network together. So it's not the same old crowd here, there, over here. It's a brand new, exciting organization.
I'll just cap that off. I think with the addition of the incredible value of professional networking for those people, and I've learned this in planning a wedding, if you have music and alcohol, you've got a party. And so I would not underestimate that.
Did you want to ask one?
No, actually I was going to chime in because we're the exact same thing. It's really in their best interest. There's a great book called Nudge about why people do things, and for joining a board, especially for younger professionals, it's really a lot in their best interest because they're going to have those networking capabilities of people that are also more seasoned, and it gets them more clients, it gets them better opportunities in their own jobs. A lot of people don't realize that engagement at a young age for a young professional is so valuable for their careers, and when you get it through that sort of lens, it really galvanizes a lot more interest into it.
But also touching too, and kind of the selling point that it being offline. A lot of people have talked about that. I think there's an incredible amount of value in that. Not just Facebook network and becoming like a friend of this, but getting the group and community together. And what I was saying earlier, an event can get that group and pull the network together face to face.
Great. Well, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, guys.